Hey out there, this is Scott Lee, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 50 board games of all time. Now, traditionally on this YouTube channel, I've been doing music videos, playing piano, singing, whatever it may be, and I haven't posted a video in a long time and decided I wanted to try taking another creative outlet on YouTube. So I figured talk about the hobby that I've been heavily involved in over the last 8 years. So this will be the first in 5 parts of my top 50 board games. I'm gonna do 10 at a time. And I'm going to throw out a few caveats before we even get started. So, first being, if there's a game that you expect might be on this list and it isn't, that's fine. If there are games out there that you like and I don't, that's reasonable. Everyone has different tastes, and in a lot of cases, it may just be that I have not played whatever game you're thinking of. One big example out there right now might be a game called Wingspan. One of the biggest games of last year, won all sorts of awards. I imagine I would love it, but I have yet to actually play it. So any games that I have not played are not going to show up on this list, obviously. Um, I've also declined to include several games in certain genres of gaming. For instance, I am not including any role-playing games, RPGs. There's several that I like and several that might clear my top 50, but I feel that that's comparing apples and oranges a little bit. Similarly, I'm not doing any like collector card games like Magic the Gathering, although I do have one collectibles game in here. So one minor exception to that rule. Um, so yeah, without any further ado, let's get started. So today I'll be doing my numbers 50 through 41, and next week I'll put out my next video to clear the next 10, and hopefully get up to number one in the span of the next month or so. And then after that, maybe do other top 10 videos. We'll see what I get inspired to do over time. So let's get it started. So my number 50 game of all time, and I will say I made this list a while ago. This was back in July of 2019 actually, and I'm recording this in May of 2020. There's been a few changes since then, probably, but I played very few new games in that time to really warrant making a new list. I can only think of maybe one new game that I've played that would uh, may have possibly made it into my top 50. So, but anyways, here is number 50. My number 50 is a classic game that I use as an intro game for a lot of people. I don't have my own copy of it, but it's a great gateway game if you want to try to get into the hobby of board gaming. And that is Ticket to Ride. I mean, this has been a classic. It's been around for a long time by Alan R. Moon. Um, it was originally published, I believe, in German under the name Zig Zug. Um, but there are a bunch of Ticket to Ride games out there. The core game is basically where you are collecting little train cars. As you can see up here, they've collected different colored pieces of a train, and you cash those in sort of as if you're collecting cards, almost like Rummy style. You cash them in to claim a route. Connecting two cities, and then you have ticket cards where you are trying to connect two cities that may be further apart. Each ticket you finish gets you points. Yeah, pretty straightforward game, and great intro into the hobby. I honestly really like the basic Ticket to Ride. Some people prefer Europe because there's a few more rules going on there, but there are a bunch of other expansions as well. And one of my favorites, I'll just throw out there just an example, because I kind of include all Ticket to Ride in this, not just base Ticket to Ride. I really like the Pennsylvania expansion. They incorporate one new simple rule of stocks, where you claim one of these routes, and you get to claim a stock card on one of them showing on one of the examples stocks shown on that particular route that you claim. Whoever gets the most stocks is going to get bonus points if they have the most of that particular stock by the end of the game. So that's a really clever, just simple tweak on the mechanic that I really like. My number 49 game of all time is Takenoko. And yes, this one looks absolutely like adorable with just like chibi cartoon panda. But there's a lot of strategy in this game for how much of a little kid game this actually looks like. Designed by Antoine Baza, who's one of the more renowned designers out there. You'll be seeing his name pop up a couple more times as we go through this top 50 list. But in this game, you are trying to complete objectives as far as eating bamboo, planting bamboo in certain patterns, and everybody is working on the same board to plant different colors of bamboo, grow them to certain heights, and score points that way. And yeah, it's just first to complete. I forget if it's seven. I think it's seven objective cards. Will trigger the end of the game. Whoever has the most points from their objective cards wins at that point. Um, I This has gone over well with pretty much everyone I've played it with. One really good friend of mine, when I was living in Virginia, was heavy into board gaming. I'd never heard of this game, and my roommate brought it over for him to try it out. And he says, "I can't believe we're going to play a game about a stupid, cute little panda." got absolutely hooked, and he had it, and he had bought it by the next week when we had shown up at his house. So yeah, this is a great game. I absolutely love it. That's Takenoko at 49. My number 48 game is Ricochet Robots. This same friend that I was talking about, who had we got hooked on Takenoko. He introduced this one to me. Ricochet Robots is an older game by Alex Randolph, and this in this game, it's basically trying to find a pattern faster than other players. So you have all these robots on the board, and you will flip a little token that will tell you a location, and another token that will tell you a color. So you have to figure out how to get, say, the yellow robot to the blue moon, and as soon as that flips, everybody looks at the board and tries to find the fastest route without moving anything, without actually touching the board. They try to find the fastest route to get that yellow robot to that blue moon space. As soon as somebody sees it, they say, I can do it in 10 moves, or whatever, however many moves they think they can do it in. At that point, you flip the timer. Everybody else keeps looking, including the person who got 10 moves, to see if they can find a way to do it faster. If no one can by the time this the timer runs out, that person proves that they can get there in those moves. They claim that token as points. Really simple, just finding the pattern, moving stuff around. Whenever you move a robot, it has to move in a straight line, and it goes as far as it can until it hits something, basically. So you can use the robots to block each other to move stuff around. Yeah, it's really clever and really fun, like pattern finding game. That's Ricochet Robots at number 48. Should I probably actually have my actual numbering list to make sure that I'm staying on the right one? I don't think I have it on hand. I'm just going to have to remember 48. Let's double check this. Yeah, 50, 49, 48. Yeah. So in at 47 is BattleTech. Again, same friend that introduced me, Ricochet Robots introduced me to this one. And this had originally come out, I believe, in 1985. It's a miniatures game where you are controlling a bunch of Mech Warrior robots, which, for those of you that may know the Mech Warrior video game, that video game was based off of this board game. So yeah, you're controlling these robots, moving them around, firing all sorts of different weapons at each other, trying to take each other out. And there's terrain is coming into play where you've got different levels of cover from trees or elevation, and you're also have to manage heat in your mech. So the more weapons you fire, the more heat you're going to generate. The more heat you generate, the more things start to malfunction. If you take damage, things start to malfunction. As you can see from the little sheet shown on this one, it looks like there are several little tick marks that have been marked off on this Mech Warrior's leg. He has so many hit points in his leg before his leg stops working and he falls over, at which point he's not as mobile as he used to be. So depending on how you roll your damage, you might be doing damage to certain body parts of the mech. You might lose functionality of certain body parts of the mech, so you can't move as fast, or you lose a weapon. You lose your ability to dissipate heat, anything like that. But yeah, it's a lot of math in this. Definitely not an intro level game. Very mathy, but a lot of fun. And there's a whole campaign method that you can use to play this game. And we played the campaign for a little while. It was an absolute blast. And you can paint these minis. It's absolutely beautiful. They've updated this game a couple times since 1985. I think I played in a much later version, probably around 2000. They had reprinted it maybe. But they have most recently printed, I believe, this last year, 2019. They have a new beginner box available if you want to get into this game. I don't know how much they actually changed the rules to the game based off that. I haven't heard much there, but still. BattleTech, really heavy, but a lot of fun. Just fighting with dudes on a map. And that is number 47. So in at number 46 is Star Wars miniatures. Now, they're kind of getting in this miniatures kick. I'm honestly not big into miniatures games in general, but these two in particular stand out for me. So Star Wars miniatures is my one collectible game on this list. In this one, and I will say this is also out of print. You cannot buy these things in like stores anymore. You pretty much can only get these minis and their cards on eBay. Or any other, people who are selling them on various sites. But in this game, you put together an army fighting one side against the other. Here, I've got like one Sith and a bunch of stormtroopers and this Nexu, the creature from Attack of the Clones, in the pit on the Battle of Geonosis, up against, as you can see, R2, D2, and Luke Skywalker and a couple of Rebel troops. And yeah, you can just build armies and fight them against each other and see who comes out on top. So if you ever want to know who would win in a fight between Emperor Palpatine and 50 Ewoks, you can figure that out just by playing this game, sorta. But really clever, just simple D20 system. Each character has a few abilities they can do. How much the basic attacks, you're going to do a certain amount of damage, but you have to hit a certain, kind of like Dungeons and Dragons, you have to hit a certain attack value in order to be able to hit. But yeah, really clever game. As I said, unfortunately out of print. It has since been replaced by a game called Star Wars Legion, which I do have the box set for. And the minis are much better produced in that one. The rules are very different though, and it's a little bit more Warhammer-esque for those of you that are familiar with that rule set than it is this traditional like D20, almost D&D style combat. And this D&D style tactics combat is what I prefer over that. So Legion's fine. I like this better though. So then that is number 46, Star Wars Miniatures. Number 45 is Azul. Azul came out just maybe about 5 years ago, 2015, I want to say. And in this game, it's an abstract game for sure, which is abstract for those of you unfamiliar with the hobby, is designed as something that's not heavily thematic. It's just a certain mechanic that is used to a high degree. Things like that would also be included that people might be more familiar with as far as abstract games would be checkers or backgammon or chess, where you're moving pieces around and trying to optimize a score that way. Or, capture an opponent's piece, something random like that. So in Azul, you are basically selecting these various tiles to build a mosaic of tiles, I suppose. And it's really hard to explain in detail how this game works, but it is pretty simple. You're just collecting some of these tiles, adding them to your supply. When you fill up a row, as you can see sort of on the left side of this image, when you fill up a section all the same color, you can then plant that tile on the board itself. And depending on where you place it, you can score points. If you get more tiles of a certain color than you can actually use, you might lose points. You need to be a little careful about when you take that big pile of all the same color. But really clever mechanics, really simple, easy to learn. There's been a couple expansions that have come out since Azul that I've heard really good things about, but I have not played them, so I can't say that they are the ones to go with. I know one is called Summer Pavilion, and I forget what the other one is called, but I believe it just came out last year, but it also got pretty high ratings. That is my number 45, I want to say, Azul. Number 44 is Mysterium. In this game, this is what, for those of you that may be familiar with these other games, this is what I call this the love child between Clue, Dixit, and Codenames. This is a cooperative game where everyone's working together to beat the game. There's one person who is basically the clue giver. They cannot speak at all. All they have is a hand of cards with images on it, and they will pass them out to these players who then have to use those cards to try to figure out what that silent player is communicating. First, they need to figure out a person, then they have to figure out a location, then they have to figure out a weapon, kind of like Clue. You got to figure out those three things. And based off the image that the clue giver gives, you have to figure out which image they're trying to, which room they're trying to communicate, which person they're trying to communicate, so on and so forth. And each player has to get all the people, all the locations, and all the rooms in the course of 7 rounds of giving clues. And really clever game, a good party game, a good cooperative game. I'm not big on cooperative games except where you have these rules of limited communication, where there is something preventing you from providing all the information to the other players. And this game executes it very well. I've heard of another game that a lot of people have been raving about called Obscurio. That supposedly it does what Mysterium does, but better. So I'm really intrigued to try that one at some point, but I haven't had the opportunity yet. But in the meantime, this is still absolutely a game I can recommend to beginning gamers, to experienced gamers. It's a good, just casual deduction, social deduction type game, limited communication type stuff. But yeah, so that's my number. I'm going to lose track of where I was at. I want to say 44, Mysterium. So in at number 43 is Isle of Skye. Now, I've only played this in person once, actually, but since then I've downloaded an app, which was pretty cheap, to where I can just play this game. And yeah, I play this one quite a bit, actually. It's a lot of fun. It's a tile-laying game, and I tend to like a lot of tile-laying games. This is by far not the last one you will see on this list. But yeah, in this one you are building different regions. For those of you familiar with Carcassonne, it's similar to that. Um, so here, but each game you also have different scoring objectives. So you might be scoring a person with each person may score 2 points per mountain region that they complete. You might score 3 points for each little section of four square that you might have completed. So in here they would have four sections of four in a square completed. Um, you might get points for how many sheep you have out there in your fields, so on and so forth. But there's a clever auction mechanic where it's you draw 3 tiles, choose one that gets thrown away, and put the other 2 up for purchase, and you by putting your own money on it. If somebody buys it, they have to give you however much money you put on it. So you put 3 money on that tile. Somebody has to give you 3 money. You get your 3 money back, so you all of a sudden have a lot more money, but you don't get to place that tile. Whereas if they don't buy it from you, you have to spend all that 3 money that you put on it and place the tile. So it's a really clever sort of business and economics mechanic that they use in order to get people to buy tiles or price tiles at certain amounts. Um, but yeah, after the course of I want to say 6 rounds, whoever has the most points wins. Pretty straightforward. Um, Speaking of tile laying, this is the tile laying that most people might be familiar with, Carcassonne, at number 42 for me. Carcassonne has been out since I believe 2000, and there's been one big rule change since then, which we learned the hard way with a friend who was playing with the old rules. Um, but in Carcassonne, you draw a tile and you place it somewhere on a communal board that everyone is working on together. And then you plant these meeples in various locations to try to score points. So you can put one on a road and you'll score 1 point for every section of road there is, every tile that has that road section on it by the time the road gets completed. You can place one in a city and get 2 points for every city section that is completed in the completed city and score points that way. There are monasteries that score you a bunch of points. Those are really popular to go for. You can score points by farming in fields, which is a permanent, like you'll see this yellow one is laid down. That means that every completed city that touches the field he's in at the end of the game is going to score him 3 points. But it's not per meeple. You have to have the most in a region. So say other people manage to farm a certain region and they have more in that region, that means they're getting the points and you don't. So you'll also see there's this city here shown where there's a red and a yellow meeple that are in the city together, but another red meeple is about to get into that city. If it did, the red would get all the points, the yellow would get none. Really clever, just simple. Draw a tile, place a tile, decide if you want to put a meeple on the board on that particular tile as you place it. Again, intro level game. I got my parents on this game and they absolutely love it. They are not as aggressive players as other people that I've played with, but they still really love this game. So that's number 42, I believe, Carcassonne. And at number 41 then is Through the Ages. Now this is opposite end of the spectrum as far as introducibility. This is a very complicated game. Imagine if Sid Meier's Civilization was a board game, even though there is a Sid Meier Civilization board game. Never mind that. This is if you wanted to build a full civilization from early ages onto the modern, like nuclear age type stuff, where you have to be managing resources, you have to be managing food, you have to be managing an army to fend off attacks from the other players. You choose what type of political system you have in place. I think everyone starts off as feudalism, I want to say, but then they can move on to it may be democracy, it may be a monarchy, it might be authoritarianism. Whole different, and each of these will give you different benefits or detriments over the course of the game. You can build wonders, you can research different science or arts or whatever it may be to give you other bonuses. A whole lot of things going on in this game. Incredibly complicated, incredibly long for people who haven't played much of it. I've heard if everybody really knows what they're doing, you can get a 2 or 3 player game of this done in like 3 or 4 hours. But inexperienced players, this could be a 6-hour game. It's rough, but it is really well designed, really clever, and it's different every time you play it. I've also heard that the app version of this is very good. I have a friend who plays that regularly. I haven't touched it at all myself, but I'm tempted to give it a go at some point because it's been a while since I played this game, and I'd love to give that a go. But yeah, so that is my number one Through the Ages, and if I remember right, yeah, so that is numbers 50 through 41 of my top board games of all time. I'll be back next week to talk through my next 10, so numbers 40 through 31, and let me know if you end up liking this video. Shoot it a like. Give me comments if are there particular themes that you would like to see. I've got a couple in mind that I'd like to run once I'm done with my top 50. Um, uh, Let me know if you have any thoughts there of things you'd like to see, information you want to find out from me about this hobby. I'm happy to share that sort of information or make more videos on it. Um, if you're interested in any of these or just looking to get more into the hobby and find more videos about the board gaming hobby, there are a couple of people I can highly recommend. The Dice Tower is one. They are definitely a review site. They give very opinionated reviews of board games. But the nice part is because all of them kind of have different opinions about board games, they balance each other out well, and so you can get a pretty good subjective idea if a board game's a good fit for you or not. If you want something far more objective, where it's just learn the facts about a game, I highly recommend Watch It Played. Rodney Smith is one of the first videos YouTube streamers or YouTube board game personalities that I watched regularly. He does how to play videos, and from watching those how to play videos, I can get a sense of myself. Is this a game that I'm interested in pursuing, purchasing, teaching my friends, that sort of thing? But there are a bunch of other streamers out there, YouTubers out there that talk about board games, so I recommend checking a lot of them out. But yeah, until next week, I think that's it. So thanks.